Thank you, Walter. Good evening, and thank you all for making the time to come tonight. It's my pleasure to speak to you tonight on the topic, Black Carolinians, Racial Anxiety and Secession in the Palmetto State. Now, in Lincoln's second inaugural, the president discusses the connection between slavery and the Civil War. And he would say that these slaves constituted a peculiar and powerful interest. All knew that this interest was somehow the cause of the war. The space of that one word, somehow, is where I want to situate my talk tonight. Our society is so very different from that of the antebellum South that it's difficult to fully appreciate the pervasive influence of slavery in that society. So tonight I want to talk about a subject that gets little attention in the discussions about the origins of the war, and that is slavery as a means of racial control. Now, the notion of life after slavery was inconceivable to most Southern whites. But when they did contemplate the prospect, they often drew upon models that they were familiar with from other places in the Western Hemisphere. These models, particularly that of Saint-Domingue or Haiti, were frequent points of reference and infused white Carolinians' already heightened anxieties with a profound sense of dread. In early 1848, approximately 80 slaves, aided by abolitionists, attempted to escape down the Potomac River into Chesapeake Bay and onward to freedom. This event, called the Pearl Incident, although unsuccessful, was the largest fugitive escape in American history. And it triggered an acrimonious and revealing debate in Congress between pro- and anti-slavery forces over what should be done. The arguments made on both sides here were restated numerous times in the next decade as the nation plunged headlong into war. And in that series of discussions and debates, South Carolina was represented by Senator John C. Calhoun, the major architect of the pro-slavery and the states' rights arguments. And I want to focus on Calhoun and three of his important observations. Firstly, before the Senate, he reiterated a point that he had made 12 years earlier, and that was, quoting him, "There is but one question that can destroy this Union and our institutions, and that is this very slavery question." Rather than retreat on slavery, Calhoun described it as, his words, "this great institution of the South upon which not only its prosperity but its very existence depends." Secondly, whereas the abolitionists desired to punish the slaveholders and enact prejudicial laws against them, he, on the other hand, wanted to protect their rights with laws making it more difficult for slaves to escape. Finally, Calhoun warned his Southern colleagues that they had been inattentive and even asleep to their region's interests. The abolitionists, by contrast, were aggressive, and they were advancing rapidly from year to year. Then, in his most stern rebuke to reticence, Calhoun claimed, "If the activity of those influences on the other side be permitted to go on unanswered, the result of the whole will be that we shall have San Domingo over again. Yes, and worse than that." This analogy to Saint-Domingue and the Haitian Revolution, which ushered in the first Black Republic in the hemisphere, would come up frequently in South Carolina's march to war, and it is an index of whites' profound anxiety over emancipation. In the mind of the South, Northern aggression continued unabated and even escalated in the next decade, emboldened by the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 abolitionists were pushed to ever more radical acts of civil disobedience. In 1 year alone, there were at least 3 dramatic fugitive slave rescue cases in Boston, Christiana, Pennsylvania, and Syracuse, New York. In these and similar cases during the 1850s, abolitionists, black and white, broke into courtrooms and jails and physically assaulted officers of the law, sometimes even with weapons, before taking possession of an alleged fugitive and spiriting him off to some unknown location, usually to Canada. Even more disconcerting to Southern slaveholders was the fact that in the North, sometimes state courts refused to uphold the Fugitive Slave Act.